Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lukas Böhler and I'm going to introduce you to our research related to combustion control with a special focus on emission reduction. I am part of the Institute of Mechanics and Mechatronics and the research group for control and process automation. Our research is centered around control design and development for a wide range of applications. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about the application of advanced control methods for a small-scale biomass furnace. During the last decades, the combustion of biofuels has been extensively researched in order to enhance the benefits of this renewable source of energy and to further exploit alternatives to fossil fuels. Not only research, but also practical application of biofuels has advanced. Such trends are favored on the one hand by the high availability of biomass and on the other hand by the carbon dioxide neutral combustion that is theoretically possible. Biomass is therefore used in industrial and domestic applications, but also comes with some challenges. Governmental restrictions, for example, are limiting the release of emissions to certain levels to protect the environment. These levels are becoming more and more restrictive over time. Plant manufacturers and industry have to respect these limits in order to operate their plants. But they are also required to be economically efficient. Respecting governmental limits, decreasing emissions and increasing efficiency at the same time is a challenging task. One way to achieve these goals simultaneously is to use advanced control methods, which leads to various research projects at our institute. Let's look into one of our more recent projects called EMIL, which is short for Emission Limited Combustion Control. The research goals were to develop and implement a model predictive controller for a small-scale biomass grate furnace, which is depicted on the right side. The furnace controller should also be optimized for all operating conditions to increase the temperature, control and thus the performance. Additionally, this optimization should also consider the formation of emissions in order to keep them as low as possible levels. Different ways of improved combustion feedback have been investigated as well, including different sensors, the application of virtual sensors and others. Finally, the furnace can be operated with different types of wooden fuels, like pellets or wood chips. However, different fuels require manual interference with existing control, which should be avoided in the future. Now, what has been done in the project to achieve these goals? First, advanced control methods like the Predictive Controller typically require process models, which have to be developed. To ensure low emissions during combustion, a basic understanding of the formation of emissions is required and has to be put into a model as well. Then, at the core obviously is the design of the MPC, the Model Predictive Controller, and the integration of the two developed models, together with an operating strategy for the furnace that allows for reduced emissions. All of this has to be implemented and validated, of course, at a test rig. Model-based control requires simple but descriptive models of the combustion process. These models are typically based on first-order differential equations and have to describe the most important variables for control. In the case of the furnace, this was the hot water temperature, the supply water temperature, available for heating and of course the temperature in the combustion chamber, which is mainly related to the formation of emissions. For that matter, the investigated furnace has been divided into 3 subsystems, which you can see on the right side. This allows to formulate analytic equations like mass and energy balances, or use data-driven approaches to simplify complex thermodynamic equations, for example, like the chemical transformation of biomass during combustion. Data-driven approaches, however, have to be parameterized with measurements, which has been done in this project with a mix of sensitivity analysis and genetic algorithms in order to find a global optimum of those parameters for the entire operating range of the plant. Similar to the combustion model, emission models are required for the predictive controller. It is apparent that the correlations between emission formation, operating conditions and fuel have to be analyzed and understood in order to teach the controller to avoid operation that favors emission formation. For that matter, carbon monoxide and nitrogen oxide formation has been measured for different operating conditions and fuels to train neural networks and fuzzy models that can estimate the formation of these emissions. Different parameterized black box models therefore have been developed, which are available as so-called virtual or soft sensors. These sensors are software-based and do not wear off over time, which is a powerful tool to monitor physical degradation and also to describe the emission formation itself. The model Predictive Controller is the heart of this research project. The goal was to design a predictive controller which is able to improve the combustion formation, which satisfies the limitations of the plant and additionally keeps the emission formation to a minimum. A predictive controller is typically a discrete control method which uses a model to calculate state trajectories over a future horizon, the prediction horizon, while trying to minimize the control error within this horizon. The control error is the difference between the desired reference, which is in this case the hot water temperature of the furnace, and the actual measured temperature. To minimize this error, the MPC uses the input variables to manipulate the modeled outputs in order to obtain an optimal solution for the horizon. This is typically expressed in the linear case, like here, by the minimization of a cost function J. This cost function considers the control error on the one hand, but also the control effort put into the plant on the other hand. Tuning matrices, Q and R here, allow for the control engineer to find an adequate trade-off for the considered application and to enhance or enforce a desired behavior of the controller. The optimal solution for this cost function with respect to the input U star is then obtained from minimizing J, subject to constraints, like for example input constraints or state constraints. Now, this cost function of the MPC can be extended. The idea is to introduce the emission formation models into this optimization. In this case, the developed CO soft sensor is used to provide information about furnace operation that should be avoided. This model is called the CoMap and is implemented in the form of soft constraints into the controller. For instance, the average furnace operation results in very low carbon monoxide emissions if the excess oxygen levels in the flue gas are at about 7% of the gas volume. To increase efficiency, the MPC would lower the oxygen levels at some operating points, but high performance is in this case, or maybe in this case, expensive in terms of emissions. Therefore, the emission limiting strategy allows a certain slack away of these O2 references, a certain region for the MPC to find a new optimum, which may be better in terms of efficiency and emissions. This is integrated into the cost function of the MPC by an additional expression accounting for the emissions. As for the NOx, for the nitrogen oxide emissions, for example, simple output constraints for the maximal combustion temperature have proven to be sufficient to limit the emissions. The MPC therefore considers the combustion and the emission model to find an optimal solution for the control inputs to operate the plant. The implementation of these developments of the control algorithm and the models has been done based on an interface that connects MATLAB, where the control design took place, and LabVIEW, which is connected to the bus system of the furnace test rig. The tuned controller is loaded via LabVIEW into the furnace control unit and runs in real time on the plant. The combustion is fully controlled with this setup by the MATLAB controller, and measurements are fed back from the furnace and are made available in MATLAB again. With this setup, it is possible to tune the MPC during the ongoing combustion without any interruptions of the combustion. This allows for a fast and efficient tuning of the controller at the actual furnace. Let's look at some results. The existing PI furnace controller is compared to the emission limiting model Predictive Controller. The first and most important goal is to provide the desired hot water temperature, the supply water temperature. We can see here a series of steps throughout the operating range of the furnace over a time period of 5 hours and how both controllers perform in comparison. At first glance, the controller seems to perform really similar, but by looking closely at when the MPC starts to increase, for example the temperature before the reference actually changes, this is where the prediction comes into play. The overall control performance in terms of quantitative measures is given in this table based on the root mean square error, where we can see that the overall temperature deviation is much smaller for the MPC due to this predictive property. While the existing PI controller uses a different reference for the oxygen concentration, as can be seen on the left side, another output of this research project was to actually find out that different references that can be realized with the MPC and the slag, for example, lead to vastly reduced carbon monoxide concentrations. Another control variable of the plant was the combustion temperature, which had no reference initially, but was assigned a reference as it is required for the MPC, because the nitrogen oxide emissions are limited based on the furnace the combustion temperature level. In the last figure here, we can see the initial carbon monoxide concentration on the left side that results from, on the one hand, from measurement as a reference and from estimation based on our carbon monoxide map, that the concentration is especially high during partial load. While on the other hand, on the right side for the MPC, we can see that both a measurement and also the estimation that provides the model information for the optimization of the MPC are both extremely low. In partial load, the actual emissions of carbon monoxide could have been reduced by a factor of 4. Another important goal was to simplify furnace operation by parameterizing a controller for different fuels instead of different controllers for each fuel. The MPC has been parameterized mostly based on measurements and performance requirements for the main fuel for that furnace, which are wooden pellets. These settings have been applied to the combustion of wood chips with different water contents without alteration, and a high control performance for these fuel types was achieved as well. Additionally, a more exotic fuel type, olive stones, also provided in the form of pellets, was investigated, and the MPC didn't require any alterations. Therefore, it has been shown that a model-based controller is highly capable of achieving the desired fuel flexibility for the furnace. To summarize what has been achieved in the project EMIL, we recapitulate the major results that have been developed. These results are the development of a suitable combustion model for model-based control, a model to estimate the emission formation, which is made available as a CO soft sensor for the MPC, and of course the design and implementation of the emission limiting predictive controller and its validation. These 3 research tasks have been published in 3 separate scientific journals, which are also publicly available. If you're interested in our research or want to do a project with us, please feel free to contact us at any time. Our expertise is not limited to control design, but we also have a lot of experience in proposing and realizing projects with industrial partners. Our working group is also involved in similar research tasks. To name a few, there is a predictive control design and modeling of a large waste combustion plant at Berch and at Wien Energie. Or we provide our expertise in modeling special furnaces like the rotary kiln for the cement industry at Rohrdorf, for example. We are also part of a team at the research plant for synthetic fuel production at the TU Wien, where we support and control design. Thank you for watching this video.